Hello class, welcome to this lecture. I want to introduce you to my boss and the Dean of Counseling at Mount San Antonio College, Raul Rodriguez. Hi Raul.
Hey, how are you doing? Well, hello class.
Great, thank you. And thanks again for taking the time to be with us today.
No problem.
Now, the question is, what are the obstacles, since this lecture is focusing on decision making, what are the obstacles for students? What are the obstacles in making a decision on a career? What can you share with us on that? Some insights.
You know, there are several obstacles that students have a tendency of getting involved with, really getting hung up on in terms of making a good career decision. Definitely, you know, looking at the issue of getting the appropriate information or the type of information that they need to make a good decision with. Part of that is the whole issue of the limitations or the obstacles that we place on ourselves. A lot of times we set our own limitations based on how we perceive who we are and what we're able to do. We really limit ourselves based on information that we've gotten usually from other people, from our own experiences, and that ties up, or that's tied up into the whole issue of how we perceive ourselves, our own perceptions of who we are and what we're capable of doing.
So you're saying a lot of people have limited expectations of themselves?
Okay. Exactly. Yeah. Thanks. And that's a good way of putting it. Okay? It's their own self-limitations, or it's their own self-perception that limits what their choices become. Because they begin to think, you know, I don't like math, so I could never do this. Or I don't like this, and that limits their ability to see beyond it. And a lot of it, again, has to do with the feedback that we've gotten from parents, from teachers, from our own experiences that create that negative impression or that negative perception that limits us, and we can't move beyond that. And it's learning how to evaluate the perceptions, those limitations, rationally. It's being able to rationally evaluate those perceptions. You know, when I teach a class using this, we talk in terms of perceptions as they impact our emotional response, and that emotional response impacts our behavior towards that situation, and our behavior determines the outcome.
Your behavior determines the outcome.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if we have a negative perception, then that elicits a negative emotional response. Let's talk about math.
Right.
Okay. A student has a bad experience with math, so they perceive that they are not able to do math. I don't like math. The emotional response to that then becomes, you know, hey, I don't like it.
Right.
Okay. It's something I don't like.
Like a lot of people do. People hate math.
A lot of people hate math.
And hate's a strong word.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a very strong emotional response.
Yeah.
And usually it's tied into something that has happened years ago. Okay, we usually have a tendency of looking at the idea that our emotional responses are formed as children. You know, and a lot of times, a lot of students have that idea or have had that experience of, you know, being up at the blackboard in the second, third grade, you know, trying to desperately solve a math problem, and sweating bullets, and sometimes much more at that early age, you know, they're at the blackboard. So, you know, that's that negative experience that establishes a perception of I can't do it, the emotional response, strong emotional response of I hate math, and the behavior then turns out, you know, the behavior that is developed is, you know, I put off math until the very end. I take math, but you know, I don't attend class, I don't do the homework, I do everything I need to do in order not to be successful.
Right.
And then the behavior, again verifies the outcome, and usually it's not being successful. So it's a form of self-fulfilling prophecy.
I see.
So as soon as a person can challenge the perception, and then more importantly, begin to make changes in the behavior. In order to be successful in math, you don't have to love math, but you do have to attend to math. Okay?
Right.
So in terms of attending, you need to go to class. You need to do the homework. You need to ask for help. Going to the MARC as an example, going to the tutorial center in Building 6 and Learning Assistance Center. It's the small changes in behavior, and I've found, not only with math, but with a number of life issues, the moment that a person begins to change, even in small increments, to change the behavior involving a circumstance or a situation that they don't like, as soon as they begin to experience small success with small changes, the perceptions begin to change. And as soon as the perception changes, that emotional response changes.
Right.
And it allows the student to have a different outcome. And that, especially in terms of career decision making, is one that needs to be challenged, because again, we limit our range of choices based on what we like. And if we could just open that up, we're looking at having a lot more options and a lot more opportunity for success.
Right. A world without limits, really. That's what we're living in.
That's it.
It really is.
That is.
Great.
And don't set your own.
Nice. Great. Well, thank you so much, Raul.
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.